So this 4th of July weekend is certainly a celebration, one where we remember and celebrate our country's independence. It is a celebration of the freedoms that we enjoy, and even in all its messiness, our democratic system and our Constitution that guides it. Our Declaration of Independence is founded on what they call a self-evident truth, that everyone has a right to life, to liberty, and to the pursuit of happiness. And while I believe this is true, and it is the best system that we have at this moment in the human realm, for those who are also awake, it calls us into a greater and greater embodiment of the truth that we are also spiritual beings. There is a great longing for the liberty that comes from unconditional love and unshakable peace. What I'm expressing to you today as spiritual liberation. I was inspired to focus on spiritual liberation. Well, the title came to me several months ago, and then I saw a book laying on the table by Michael Beckwith called Spiritual Liberation. So it's like, oh, there it is again. And I came across this short video with Michael Beckwith about what it looks like to move towards complete spiritual liberation. And I wanted to share that with you this morning.
Just think about this, that what if you becoming awake? What if you becoming evolved? What if the world depended upon you waking up? And I say it does. Agape, it's a Greek word that means unconditional love. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. described agape as the love of God operating in the human heart. We believe that we're here to wake up to our true nature and being and then participate fully in the society in which we live. This has been going on for over 21 years, and it feels as though that we're just getting started. By the title, you're aware that the book is about spiritual liberation. Not religiosity, but liberation. It's about unlocking the gifts and the beauty, the intelligence, the capacity within us, along with spiritual practices that set us free to become more ourselves. There is an evolutionary impulse that governs the universe. Some call it God, some call it life itself. But we're at a stage of our unfoldment where we can consciously practice, consciously participate in our own evolution, in our own unfoldment. That as we wake up, we can be individuals who are pulling society further, so that your awakening not only affects you and your family and your associations, but your awakening affects the entire planet. We're all connected. When people ask, how do I practice my belief? I have to first of all say your belief leads you to a level of practice. I believe we're connected to life. Therefore, I meditate every day. I pray every day. That prayer allows me to have an insight and a revelation into a deeper dimension of my own being, which then does what? Allows me to be more creative and to be of greater service. So belief becomes insight, becomes creativity, becomes service.
He reminds us that we're here to wake up, and not just for ourselves, but we are here to wake up so that we can help the world awaken to their own unique gifts and light. Beyond prayer and meditation, which we talk about pretty frequently here in Unity, there are other practices that can bring us into that experience. Those are the foundational ones, but there's other things that I want to invite us to explore as we go through this holiday weekend and move forward. And the first is to give thanks, especially for those things that sometimes we and others take for granted. There's a lot that we take for granted as we go about our daily lives. To give thanks, first of all, for our life, for the very breath that is moving through our bodies right now, and the opportunities, as long as we're breathing, that we have to continue to grow and evolve. to really be grateful for the liberties that we enjoy, because there are many people in our world that don't have that same liberty as they're given right by the place that they are being held right now. The opportunities to pursue our dreams, the opportunity to change our circumstance. It's huge in our world. To celebrate all the comforts that we enjoy. We live a pretty comfortable life in this country, at least most of us here do. To express appreciation, and this weekend is a perfect time to do that for family and for friends and for those who walk this journey with us. And we can even celebrate and give thanks for those struggles in life, for those situations and people that challenge us, for they push us to grow and evolve more. When we can experience life as a celebration rather than a problem to be fixed, we move closer to spiritual liberation. I love this example that Reverend Michael gave in his book because it helps us have a visual and something tangible that can make sense to us. So some of you in here may remember going to the movie theater where there used to be a projection box in the back, and there still is to some extent, but it's a little different now. And if you looked back up at that box, there would be this huge light streaming from that box on to the screen. And when you looked at the screen, everything looked absolutely real. In fact, sometimes it was almost too real, but it brought you in. It could bring you, just by looking at that projection, to laughter, to tears, to fear, and many other emotions. And yet, if you turned around and followed the beam of light back to that projection room, you'd see nothing but light itself. The characters were never really real. They were never really alive on the screen, even though they could invoke that emotion in us and for a while bring us into that imaginary world. But in truth, only the light was there. This movie that we're in right now is our three-dimensional Earth theater. It is projected from the light of God onto the screen of life. Each feature and each role in this movie is a part of this great, big epic called Earthwalk. Consciousness is the light that projects the film onto the screen of our awareness. I want you to hear that again. Consciousness, our awareness, is the light that projects the film onto our perceptions, onto our experience of it. And when we direct our attention to the light, to that inner Christ presence within us, through prayer, through meditation, through other practices, we can move the movie reel version of our life into something that is more aligned with the light from which is being projected. We move from just being and watching and as best we can trying to work through whatever's being projected to being that real joy of existence, that real light that is being expressed out. In everything, we always like to measure. This is part of our humanness. Where are we? How far have we gone? How far do we have to go? And so one of the questions that I often get is, well, how do we know? How do I know if I'm moving in the right direction? How do I know if I am living from a place of greater and greater spiritual liberation? And one of the great indicators of our progress is how quickly we are able to forgive ourselves and others. Maybe not in the moment, but how quickly can we get there? Because when we hold on to, when we live from a place of resentment or animosity or a desire for retaliation, which is part of our human nature that shows up every now and then, When we can shift from that and move more quickly to a place of compassion, of self-forgiveness, and then ultimately forgiveness of others, we know we're moving further along this path. We actually even might begin to be grateful for those who may have hurt us. We might be open to allowing the good, that nugget of good, to be found in the midst of all that pain. Because ultimately we realize that they are shining a light on some part of us that wants to be healed, some part of us that needs to be liberated. This is much of the deep work that we're doing through the art of quantum living. And I have a great class going right now. I'm so excited with the 7 people who are engaged in this work because it can free us. It can give us that sense of openness and allow us to move and embrace greater things as a result. We know that we're making progress when we recognize that others were not created to fulfill us. How often do we depend on others to make us happy? On others to do the things that we need done so that we can feel okay about ourselves and our life? No one is here to make us happy outside of ourselves. No one is the cause of our happiness outside of ourselves, even though it might seem different in that projection of life that we get to experience. We know we're making progress when we can engage in life's challenges and in the challenges of our communities and of our country from a place of compassion. Compassion is very different from sympathy and empathy. Sometimes they're used interchangeably. But I want to just explore a little bit about how those show up differently in our own energy and how they have the capacity to change things in our outer world. So here's just a short little video, and this is about the difference between sympathy, empathy, and compassion.
Sympathy, empathy, compassion. These 3 words often get used synonymously, but there are some important differences. When you think of compassion in particular, what comes to mind? How is it different or similar to sympathy and empathy? It can be tricky to tell between them to begin with, but knowing what compassion really is crucial when researching these topics. Here at the Compassion Research Lab, we've conducted extensive research on compassion. We've looked long and hard at what it is and how it differs from sympathy and empathy. We did this by reviewing the scientific literature and by speaking with patients directly about their experiences. Both the literature we reviewed and the patients we spoke to gave us a comprehensive understanding of the true nature of compassion. To illustrate, let's imagine you're a patient recently diagnosed with cancer. Your outlook is good, but you're worried. On top of all of this, it's happened right in the middle of a big move. Hearing about this, you notice your family, friends, co-workers, and healthcare providers all react in different ways. Oh my goodness, that sounds awful. Are you gonna be okay? I'm so sorry. It must be horrible. Thinking of you, this is sympathy. It's a pity-based response based on a lack of understanding. It makes people say things that make them feel better, but it doesn't do much for you. Then there are others that try to understand what it would be like for them if they were in your situation by trying to feel what you are feeling. They tell you that they know what you're going through. They imagine what it would be like for them to be in your shoes. They might tell you that they have gone through something similar. This is empathy. It makes you feel heard, understood, and a bit better about your situation. But then there are those who try to really understand what it is like for you, to feel what you feel, and who aren't afraid to suffer with you and to do something to help. They actively listen, they're kind, they're loving, and they genuinely seek to understand you and your unique needs. But then they go one step further. and show up on the weekend to help out with the big move. They haven't said they feel sorry for you. They haven't just understood you. They have been selfless and done something to help. They aren't afraid to engage you in your suffering. They understand you and what you actually need, not just what they would want if they were in your shoes. Most important of all, they actually do something to improve your situation. That is compassion. Sympathy, empathy, and compassion may seem similar, but for those experiencing suffering, the differences are obvious and impactful. Patients told us that sympathy was unwelcomed and unhelpful. They told us that empathy was better because it attempted to understand what it would be like to be in another person's shoes. But compassion took things to the next level by understanding and addressing a patient's needs in a personalized manner, not just through words or feelings, but by putting their ego aside and by getting their hands dirty in order to actively engage and alleviate a person's suffering.
So ultimately, compassion is what each of us are called to both give and ultimately, hopefully, be able to receive. And the best place we can start is with self-compassion, because oftentimes there's a lot of injury that we do to ourselves through our own self-talk. And when we can feel that sense of compassion for our own imperfect journey, we can then have the capacity to give it to others. We can't give what we don't already have. You know, oftentimes when there is a tragedy that happens in our country, and I'm talking to you right now, Kristen, this is just for you, and we struggle with it, and we go through these different modes of sympathy, but the challenge with sympathy is that we feel it for a moment, we imagine, and then it goes away. Empathy goes a little further because at least it can help people know that they're not alone and they're feeling heard. But it's compassion, it's that place of compassion which is always with the energy of love. We cannot be compassionately angry. It's not, the two words don't go together. Compassion is that place of love, that place of understanding, that place of a desire then to also move into action. And it may only be that we send our light of love there. Maybe that's all in that moment we can do for any given individual, but we can do that. We can be that presence of love. We can move into that place for ourselves so that we can then give it to the others who may be in real desperate lack of that in their lives at the moment. So this morning, as we move into our time of meditation, we're going to do a little work on self-compassion so that we can fill our tanks and have a greater capacity then to express that compassion into our world. So I invite you to just get comfortable right where you are. You might want to close your outer eyes because it just helps bring your focus within. To be aware of the breath as it's moving in and through your body. Aware of your feet as they are gently placed on the ground. Even imagining that there are now roots growing out from the very soles of your feet deep down into the earth, grounding you into this time and space. Nurturing your body with the earth's rich resources. And then as we move our attention into our heart space, almost as if we're breathing in and out of our heart, I invite you to bring into this space something that you're experiencing that is difficult right now. Perhaps it's adding a greater level of stress or worry or is painful. Acknowledge to yourself that this is a hard place to be in, that it's difficult right now. And then let that divine love within you also help you to recognize that all of humanity suffers, that this is part of the human journey, and that you are not alone. Give compassion and understanding to yourself. Recognize that it's sometimes difficult and uncomfortable to navigate these feelings. But yet, as you stay with them, you give the space, the room for them to be comforted, to be understood, and to be healed. Imagine yourself as a child coming to you for comfort. That little version of you who was hurt and is just seeking someone to tell him it's okay. And feel your heart open for that younger version of yourself. You might even want to invite them into your lap so that you can hold them, soothe them. Use loving, caring assurances as your words. And as they feel your compassion, as they feel your actions of being enfolded and feeling safe and knowing it's going to be okay, feel that sense of peace wash over your entire being, quieting your mind, expanding the capacity of your heart, feeling a sense of oneness, not only with yourself, but its connection to all of life. And let that little child now get down and run off to its next adventure and begin to bring your attention back to this time and to this moment. Aware once again of your body and your breath. And then whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. So when our hearts are flowing with compassion, when we can generate that sense of compassion for ourselves, we can then extend it out to others around us. We can extend what Michael Beckwith calls that agape love to those in our world. I love how Martin Luther King Jr. described this, and I want you to keep that image in your heart, that God's love is that agape love operating through human hearts. When we are operating from that sense of God's love, we are God's love that then moves into action. God's love operating through our hearts. That's who we're here to be. Compassion calls us to action in ways that add more love and peace to our lives, to our communities, and to our world. It's very different than being motivated to act by fear, being motivated to act as simply a way to make our own discomfort go away. When we can move from that place of compassion, we can really allow that to ripple and make a positive change in our world. So I have one final practice that I want to invite you to embrace that brings us closer and closer to our own spiritual liberation. Excuse me. And that is to expand our perceptions. And you've heard this before, but I'm just going to ask you to practice it some more this week and in the coming weeks, to ones that are both and rather than either or. Sherry, sorry, I don't want to do that to all of you. So instead of it's either this or that, which is the way we often disseminate things as we go through our life, what if it was both? What if it was both and? And I want to leave you with these questions to ponder, to see if you can get to that both and place with these, and then perhaps bring some of your own into that exploration. I saw this out on Facebook in my very brief times that I jump out there. This happened to scroll by. It was credited to author unknown, so whoever did this, I'm not sure. I will give the credit to something out there. And it asks us to be in the question of, and some of these you might be able to say yes easily to, some may not be as easy. Is it possible to believe in both God and in science? Is it possible to love thy neighbor and yet despise their actions? Is it possible to have privilege and be discriminated against, to be poor and have a rich life, to have no job and yet have great abundance as part of your experience? Is it possible to be both different and the same? We're all walking contradictions of what normal looks like. But when we can embrace this both and perspective, both humanity and love and liberation win. As you're enjoying these amazing sights of lights bursting in air over these next couple of days, I just also invite you to imagine that that is that light within you that is bursting, that is calling to be expressed in a greater and greater way, that we become our own beautiful light, our own beautiful fireways. So, well, it is our opportunity now to share of our financial good with Center of Unity, and we are so grateful and blessed for all of the ways in which we receive our good and we let it flow back out into our community. We are excited that since our announcement last week, we are well over $1,000 raised towards the reopening of Hughes Road Montessori, and just wanted to remind you, if you can give some towards that, even if it's $25 or $50 extra to help us launch this new school, to have as part of our daily experience here in our building. Just make sure you note that on whatever method that you're going to share that with us so that we can designate it for that. And anything that we get over and above the $2,500 that we're looking to match will just be reinvested into the school to help continue it to grow and to expand in ways that will really bring the community into our doors. We are so blessed, and I hope you are feeling blessed today too, and you can bring that energy of gratitude for all the good that is flowing in your life, and let that be the energy in which you give, or remember the way that you're giving through your committed giving program that happens automatically. So let us take these gifts that we offer today into our hands, into our hearts, and bless them together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, Father, Mother, God.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the
into this holiday weekend celebrating the freedoms we enjoy and moving towards greater spiritual liberation, we go, knowing our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Join us for some tacos and fellowship and have a beautiful weekend. But I was like, oh yeah, that's coming up. Yeah. And what was I